Let's cross live now to our colleague Ofentse Setimo. You at the court. Ofentse, have proceedings begun?
Thank you very much, Desiree, and a good morning to your viewers. Well, the proceedings are expected to start at around 11 o'clock this morning, where the 12 suspects are expected to hear the verdict of their bail application. We know that this has been a very lengthy bail application where initially the court had to establish the address of the suspects, all of which are South African. And, you know, it's just been a case that has just been dragging. From what we know that since July, they have been appearing. In fact, initially, it was 13 of them, and then one was let off the hook due to lack of evidence. But we are expecting that the Alexandra Magistrates Court today is actually going to hand down judgment in their bail application. You can remember that somewhere between the 13th to the 15th of August, you know, the community of this particular township were actually traumatized as these guys were actually allegedly going on a shooting spree, you know, killing allegedly about 6 people. But from what we've gathered so far, police have linked them to 2 murders, and they are currently trying to establish a case of the other 4 murders that actually took place during the commission of those crimes. But for today, it's just a matter of whether the magistrate will agree, and we know that prosecution will vehemently, you know, oppose this particular bail application to be granted to the 12, saying that, you know, if they are released, they could actually pose a danger to the community as they were allegedly shooting indiscriminately at people during the commission of this heinous crime, where about 6 people actually lost their lives. Desiree.
I was just reading in the introduction that the legal representatives of the accused are saying that they were forced to confess. How watertight is the state's case, Ofentse?
Well, at this present moment, we know that they have confirmed that, you know, the 2 murder cases are the ones that they are actually probing at this particular point. We know that they are also confident in the fact that the suspects had an illegal possession of firearms and ammunition, and in fact, they were also in possession of suspected stolen goods, which could have been taken during the aggravated robberies that were allegedly taking place when the crimes were actually committed here in Alexandra. So they are quite convinced that they have a watertight case in those charges that I just listed, and in fact the police are trying to make sure that they also link them to the other 4 cases of which they say they are allegedly the perpetrators of those murders as well, which is the 4 other murders of which at this present moment they don't form part of the charge sheet that's leveled against the accused here at the Magistrates Court. Well, proceedings are expected to begin just after 11 o'clock, and that's when we'll get to hear exactly what is the verdict for the 12 suspects that have been arrested since July up until now. And they have been remanded in prison, as the state was actually saying that should they be released, it could compromise the case, as potential witnesses could be intimidated, you know, making the state's case weak. Hence, the magistrate also agreed with them to keep them remanded in prison all this time up until today, when we will hear whether the magistrate will actually release them or they will keep them behind bars for them to actually go on trial while they are behind bars.
I don't know if you've had a chance to speak to members of the community at all. Is there any sense of safety and security since these suspects have been arrested?
Well, there is a sigh of relief from community members after the arrests were actually made, because you can imagine when the shooting sprees were happening indiscriminately, and, you know, Alexandra is quite a busy township where there's always a lot of people, you know, some are selling on the streets, some are just going to work, but it's always quite busy and there's always buzzing with a lot of people on the streets. So is, yes, a sense of a sigh of relief, if I may put it that way, that after the culprits or the suspects were actually taken off the streets, there is a bit of a sigh of relief that, you know, in fact, after they were taken off the streets, you might know that the shooting actually halted, of which it might be the state's argument to say that, you know, there could be some sort of a link between the suspects and the incidents that happened, because once they were taken off the streets, arrested at what is termed the notorious Nobuhle hostel, they are saying that, you know, there is some sense of safety from the community, even though they are still saying that, you know, much more could could still be done by the police, to ensure their safety. And in fact, when we were just outside courtroom number 3, where the proceedings are set to take place, there was a lot of interest. There were so many people outside courtroom 3 at about 8 o'clock this morning, and you could sense some sort of a disappointment when they were told that the case is actually going to happen at 11. But right here outside, there are still a lot of people that will be joining us inside there, as there is a lot of keen interest to try and find out whether the perpetrators or the suspects would actually be released today or if they will be held inside. But the state contends that, they want to keep them inside, and in fact they are going to oppose this particular bail application, Desiree.